Welcome back to Clare GA TV. I'm joined here now by Seamus Hayes to have our weekly look back at the draws that have taken place here today. So for anyone who doesn't know, we have had 4 draws. We've had the intermediate and senior relegation playoff games, and we've also the quarterfinals for the senior and intermediate championship. So we'll just have a quick look here now at the intermediate football relegation playoff games, the 2 of them being Navan v Aero Guinness and Liscannor v St. Senans. I suppose Seamus, looking at it, a couple of big name clubs there, and especially looking at Navan, St. Senans, Kilkee and Liscannor with their first teams, they'll all be pushing hard to try and maintain their status.
Yeah, they certainly will, Sean, and it's only a couple of years ago since Navan and Aero played a thrilling junior A final inside Twisy Park, with Navan snatching victory in the dying minutes. Liscannor and St. Senans, it's not that long ago since they were contesting senior championship finals and St. Senans winning senior finals. I suppose the pairings, what it indicates is the rural population, especially in Liscannor, St. Senans areas where they're both struggling with numbers in recent years, but the makings of 2 very lively games.
And I suppose from Aero's point of view, they had come up last year from the junior A, and they, I suppose, lost a few players this year to the senior team, which, as we saw on Saturday evening, is progressing very well, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. But I suppose that's had a bearing on their competitiveness in the intermediate championship this year.
Yeah, it certainly has. Like they have used 4 or 5 players who were part of their intermediate team in the early stages of the season. They've used them in the senior championship in recent weeks, and even last Saturday I think they used 2 more, brought them on as substitutes, which obviously weakened their intermediate team. But they have a lot of talent in Aero, and they're in the Junior B semi-final as well, so they're going strong and have their future bright.
And then if we were to look ahead, I suppose, to the quarter-final draws that have taken place. So our 4 quarter-finals in the intermediate championship this year are the St. Joseph's v Woodtones, we've Kilfenora against Kildysart, Shannon Gales and Coolmeen, and then finally we've St. Breckens and O'Curry's. Some mouth-watering contests in store, I suppose. Each of those, I suppose, on the left-hand side of our screen were group winners, and then on the right-hand side were the teams that finished runners-up in their group so far this year.
Yeah, and included there were a couple of the teams that were relegated last year when 5 teams lost their senior status in the new format. St. Breckens are being tipped by most people as the favourites for the championship. They're going to meet a strong crowd in O'Hurry's. They're a physically strong team. They've been there or thereabouts. We're in senior grade, for the last number of years, and that's a game that is going to attract a big attendance. Shannon Gales and Coolmeen, local derby neighbours, they're amalgamated actually in ladies football as Cool Gales. They know each other very well, and it's one that probably won't be much in. Kildysart, another one of the fancy teams of the district championship, come up against Kilfenora, and Kilfenora have topped their group this year, maybe after maybe struggling a bit last year. Kildysart will be fancy to win that one, and St. Joseph's and Woodtones, are better known for their hurling skills, but they have made a name for themselves in football in recent times. St. Joseph's probably will be fancy to promote that one.
Well, I suppose the decision last year, to bring the 5 teams down, it really has left us with 4 what should be evenly balanced, maybe quarter-finals, and a good intermediate championship with high standard for quarter-final, semi-final and final stage now.
Yeah, you're certainly correct on that. The intermediate championship has benefited, I think, big time by the reform, the regrouping of the teams in the various grades from last year. Some people might be too happy with the senior format at the moment, but certainly I think the intermediate has benefited, and we'll see that with the games on Saturday, Sunday week.
Moving on then, I suppose, to the relegation games that we have in the senior championship. So Clonagad, who we saw, I suppose, on Saturday evening on our live game, defeated by Aero, which means that they now play Kilrush Shamrocks, last year's intermediate champions, and then we have Clare and Corrafin in the other playoff.
That's right. Again, I suppose Clare have been knocking on the door in the past couple of years, as have Clonagad. Clonagad had contested the final just 2 years ago, contested the QC Cup final earlier this year. And were drawn in what was quickly labelled the group of death, but they were over in Petro, and they were the unlucky ones to lose out. They would be hotly fancied to save their senior status. They come up against Kilrush, who were well beaten the weekend by Kilmahel in a crucial game. Kilrush not that happy about the relegation system this year. They feel that, and understandably so, they feel that the team that finished bottom, which is Name 1 parties, should be in the relegation and not them, but that's for another day. They're in this situation now and they'll be up against Clondigad. Clare and Corofin, I suppose it's a game that could go anywhere. Corofin were in the quarter-finals last year, but this year they've struggled a little. The loss of your old Cahill through injury, and Jamie Malone has been carrying an injury in the last couple of games, hasn't helped their cause. Clare played arguably their best game of the year against Dunbeg just this weekend gone by. The game was a draw, but a draw wasn't enough for Clare, and now they face the prospect of relegation. That actually, Clare and Corofin could be a lively contest.
And as you say, a lot of people are looking at it and they're saying, and I suppose I've heard it said over the last few days, that maybe Clondigad are being QC Cup finalists, being in the county final only a short while ago, that they're too strong to go down. But we've seen in both codes that that's not always the case.
I agree with you there, and I've seen it with my own club. It's the case in the last couple of years. The mindset changes when a team is knocked out of the championship and they're going to the relegation. There's a nervousness there. Then people are worried about how they're going to approach a game and what might happen. And I suppose lads lose a bit of interest as well when you're out of the main event, and it's hard maybe to get lads to train. But certainly there's a nervousness there, and anything can happen in one of these games.
And I suppose from Clonigad's point of view, an awful lot of their players are obviously out again this weekend again with Ballyea. They're going to be playing in the quarter-final of the senior hurling, so they won't get the opportunity maybe to focus on it as much as they like until maybe Tuesday week.
That's right, and by then Ballyea will be hoping that they're in the county semi-final. So that's another issue then that they have to deal with, because there's about 10 of the players involved in board courts, and it's a hard thing to manage. But there's no doubt that Clondigad have no doubt of talent and would deserve to be in the top 4 or 5 teams at the moment. They're going number 4 in the senior, but that's the way things go. They didn't make it through, and now they have to face into fairly difficult another campaign you could call it, I suppose, in the relegation.
And I suppose Clare, we saw them in their first game against Ennis-Simon here on RGA Live, but they are obviously on a run where they haven't won a game in the QC Cup, and they've now gone through their group games as well. They haven't picked up a victory as of yet, so I suppose it's about resetting the batteries now and getting the mentality where that win is necessary in order to ensure their survival.
Yeah, that's correct, Sean, and they have a very young team, to be fair. I think they have 7 under 21s, and they've only about 3 or 4 of their squad who are over 24 or 5, so they've been building a new team as well. They certainly played their best game of the championship of the season against Dunbeg this weekend, just gone by, and if they can maintain that form, they should be able to overcome Corofin. But that's going to be a close game, and it's going to be a tight one. Corofin can focus on it now, because for them they're out of the individual hurling championship, so they'll be able to maybe focus really on that game with Clare, and it's one that could go either way.
Yeah, two very tight contests maybe in store the weekend after next, and then it brings us to I suppose the main rounds and the quarter-final draws for the Senior Football Championship. So we have our holders Milton Galway, and they're playing CKC, your own club. We have Kilmurray or Brecon playing Kilmahel, Ennis-Simon against Cracklow, and Aerobe against Dunbeg. So we might just start with the top one. The holders at the moment in St. Joseph's, they're playing their last group game at 7:30 in a couple of minutes' time, but as we know, that result will have no consequence on their seeding as top of the group. And I suppose from your own point of view, in CKC would have been happy with the improved performance the last day, and in a way you probably have nothing to lose, and that Milton will be more or less strong favourites going into this one.
Yeah, that's right. Milton, they're bound for the double now, because since they won the senior championship title last year, they've added the QC Cup title, which is the senior league crown already this year, and they are the foreign team, to be honest. The CKC securing their senior status and not being involved in the relegation, I suppose, has been a big plus already, because they had battled relegation a couple of times in recent years. They looked lively enough Saturday evening, their win over Corofin. They've been well beaten by Milton already this year in the QC Cup, so they have something to aim at. But to be fair, Milton will have to wear the favourites tag. They're a very settled team. David O'Brien is a very good manager, and he's a lot of work done with them. They're determined to hold on to the Jack Daly Cup for at least another year, so they will carry the favourites tag into that one.
And then I suppose their predecessors as champions, Kilmurray Bricken, looking at the intermediate champions from 2 years ago in Kilmehel again. Kilmehel have shown, I suppose, that they are able to compete with the best, and that they'll be hoping to put in a strong performance, and there shouldn't be much in the contest.
No, and it's probably a pairing that Order didn't want, because he's in charge of Kilmehel this year, and he's a man who's played a key role in the many successes Kilmurray Bricken have had over the last 10 or 15 years. Kilmehel, I saw them in the first round against Milltown, and to be honest, they were unlucky not to get something out of that game. They were, I think, beaten by 4 points in the finish, but they were very lively. They're a very fit team. They have a lot of good young players coming through, and they'll relish the challenge. They'll relish having a go at Kilmurray Bricken. They were managed 2 years ago by another Kilmurray Bricken man, Dermot Coughlin, who guided them to the intermediate title that year. So there's a lot to play for there. Kilmurray will be favourites. They have a very experienced team, but Kilmehel have youth on their side, and Order he's a good coach. He has in great shape at the moment, so there'll be a lot of interest in that one for that point of view.
And then the third quarter-final, I suppose, the last two beaten finalists, if you like, in Estymon and Cracklow, and I suppose it was always going to be whoever finished second in that group of death, as you said, that was going to set up a lively quarter-final, and as it turns out, it's in Estymon that have drawn Cracklow, and that's going to be a real draw of a game, I suppose, for that weekend.
That's right. Arguably it's the tie of the quarter-final round. They're two very strong teams. Cracklow were very impressive in the first round over Clondigad, and played the last 2 in a row last time out. But they are strong, they're experienced. They have all their players, I think, fit and well now at the moment. David Ryan has been injured for the last couple of weeks, but I think he's back to full fitness. Aubrey Murphy missed the first round. He's back in full fitness as well. In Estymon, disappointed, I suppose, with the way they went over the Cusack Cup. They were well beaten by Clondigad in the semi-final game. But Jared Quinlan has done a lot of work training the team, and that certainly would be a big tie, and it's one that could go either way. And while some people will say in Estymon being the quarter-final last year was satisfying, but it's very hard to go against Cracklow. They're very experienced and they have a very strong squad.
And our final pairing, then you have the team of the weekend scoring 3-17, I suppose, against Clondigad Rogue, and they're playing Dunbeg, and Dunbeg, I suppose, got the draw that they needed the last day out, which puts them through. But I suppose they'll have a lot of work to do based on the performance that we saw out of Rogue at the weekend.
Certainly so. Rogue were most impressive at the weekend, particularly in the second half. They were firing on all guns, and on that second half performance, I think most people have maybe reassessed who they would see as favourites for the title, or strongest to challenge Milltown, and they see that as being Rogue. Paul and Saturday's performance, they have a very strong panel. They were on 6 players last Saturday who were as good as the players they replaced. So they have a panel of 25 or 6 players who are going great guns. There's a great buzz in Rogue at the moment, and they're hurling semi-final or quarter-final as well this coming weekend. And there's 8 or 9 dual players, and they're all working very well together. So it's hard to look beyond Rogue for that one, but they're big, and they're easily beaten, and they have a man called David Troubley amongst their forward line, who's key to everything that they have achieved in recent times, and he will take some marking, but would have to be given the favourites tag based on the weekend's performance.
But I suppose even looking at that game, although Rogue scored 3-17, they also conceded 17 points. I suppose we saw at the start of the game where Tony Kelly had their inside full back line in trouble. He kicked 3 points in the first couple of minutes. So as you say, with the likes of David and that in there is always a shot if Dunbeg can get a good start and go from there, that they'll be winning that contest.
Certainly, and referring back to the weekend's game with Rogue, as you said, Clondigad would not have been flat out to have been more than 2 points ahead at half time. Gary Byrne and James Murphy were unlucky not to score goals. They went through very early in the game. Gary's effort to raise the post and just went wide. James Murphy's hit the crossbar and went over. Could easily have gone under the bell. So it could have been a different story maybe if Clondigad had a bigger lead at half time. But overall, Dunbeg or Rogue would carry the favourites tag. Dunbeg, they're strong, but they're experienced. But Rogue have some great youth on their team at the moment, and they'll be looking to the young players like Gavin Cooney and Evan Courtney maybe to pick off the sports that would see them go through to the next sport.
Thanks very much for your time, Seamus. I suppose there we have it. Our quarter-final pairings have been decided in both the intermediate and senior championships. They'll all be played the weekend after next on Saturday and Sunday week, and what a weekend we'll have in store for those. On top of that, we're delighted to announce we'll have our first double header live on Clare GA TV as we show the two quarter-finals from Saturday's games in Cusick Park, where Clare take on Cracklow and Aero take on 6 Mile Bridge. So we'll be live on Saturday for those two games from roughly around 1:45 p.m, but with more details to follow during the week. Thanks very much for all that watched. Hope you enjoyed our broadcast, and we'll see you again soon.